Mr. Barrow from the Planning Commission is absent, and Mr. Mike Marshall is filling in for one of them. And with that, we will stand for a prayer and a pledge. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to ask you to allow us to make good decisions on these ordinances and laws that affect everyone from Ascension Parish. We thank you for the weather that we've been having lately, and we ask you to allow us to get home safely and everybody get back with their families and have a good evening. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we appreciate everyone coming here, and we're sorry again for the delay, but we want to move on. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to ask everyone that would like to either come up and identify yourself and speak. As we initially do this, we'd like you to come up to the microphone, and then after that, if we have anything that needs to be said back and forth, we have a portable mic that you don't have to get up and go back and forth. So we won't. It's going to be fairly informal. You'll have an opportunity to speak at any time. You won't. It's not just going to be a one-shot deal. Our aim is to try to work something out where it's fair and equitable to all people involved, and that is the best thing for the parish. And so we ask that you approach things in that manner. With that, if you would like to come up and get started, for the people, the benefit of the people that were not here before, we had a meeting and we had some parts of the subdivision construction specification that people had disagreed on how we were implementing or what we were trying to implement. And so we had asked at that point in time to send to Mr. Michael Sanji, the parish engineer, your concerns and some possible solutions, and at which time he would address them, and so that we can have some background. And so we want to take this opportunity to hear from you on your concerns. I think, Michael, how many?
I got 2 emails, but I think they were both the same letter.
Okay.
So it's to my knowledge, I've just received one communication.
Okay. So if we could have, who would like to get started? Gary, you want to crank it up? I know you're not at a loss for words.
It looks like everybody's got bashful on me. We have been working on this thing for quite some time, gentlemen. I was asked back several months ago to actually serve on a committee to help put this thing together. And I, from the outside, tried to represent my constituents. Evidently, I didn't do a very good job of that, and we have asked that we revisit these things. There's a lot of concerns out here. We have put together this letter that we sent to y'all and to Michael Sanjay in reference to what's being put in here, and we feel like these things need to be looked at from a more professional manner with a lot of different people involved in it, including your testing lab people, your engineers, your contractors, as well as developers, builders. Everybody needs to have some input in this thing because it is getting to be real strenuous to try to develop in Ascension Parish. Now, the council has tried to put together, through the Strategic Planning Committee, you tried to put together some criteria that y'all would like to see developed. We have tried, as developers, to try to design to some of this criteria. Then we go back before your own committees out there and we get shot down because that is not what the committees are looking for. So it's getting to be a real tough situation, and we are not sitting up here tonight saying that these specifications and rules and regulations don't need to be looked at. We have never indicated that anywhere in there. But we do feel like they need to be looked at in a broader range with a lot more input than what's been up to this point. And that's what we're asking for tonight. Is to put together a committee. We have quite a group of people out here that is willing to serve on that committee now. In the beginning, it was kind of put together in a manner that, well, the feedback I'm getting is that not many people knew about it. We tried to get it out there. Evidently, we didn't do a very good job of it. So we're asking, we have people involved now that want to be involved and are willing to spend their time in a committee-type situation to try to put something together for the benefit of the parish, as well as the developers, builders, contractors, and everybody involved. And just more rules and regulations is not the answer.
Can you give us some specifics as to what you're talking about?
Well, we can get into a lot of specifics, but I'm going to take one example because it is my expertise. The dirt work and the compaction areas that we're trying to cover in here, and the fact that now we're leaving Department of Public Works and Improvements, and we're trying to start regulating private property, and we're putting stringent controls on things that from a construction standpoint out here, you are always on a time frame. Now, a paper trail is a good thing to have, but I've heard people already tonight say, well, I didn't receive this, I didn't receive that, and that seems to be the story. Well, when I've got a contractor out there with multi-million-dollar worth of equipment sitting on a job, and then all of a sudden somebody tells me when I'm ready for another one of these inspections that we keep adding, oops, I didn't get that paperwork. Well, my next alternative is to get on my testing lab. Well, the testing lab tells me they sent it out. Well, you know, we're getting to a point where every step we have, gentlemen, is a paper trail involved. And it is real time.
Is this from planning?
I'm sorry?
Is this from planning, or is it a problem from planning, or is it a problem from DPW from that standpoint?
Well, it's really not from DPW, because that's one of the other problems that we have is DPW is basically no longer involved in DPW improvement. DPW doesn't attend any of the Planning Commission meetings. I don't see a whole lot of input in any of it from DPW. But yet they're the people that have to accept this in the final end result. And in answer to your question, no, we've gone beyond Planning Commission. Planning Commission does not regulate all the inspections and,
right, and that's
the
what I was
paper
getting
trail, and you're getting back to your people that are involved in the actual inspections, your engineering review agency. This is what we're dealing with right now.
You would like to see that streamlined?
Well, now, when you go back to the Planning Commission side of it, more rules and regulations that add more of this paper trail, that's what we have to work on. Now, the Planning Commission is trying to set up rules and regulations that they can abide by to do a better job of controlling construction and development in the parish, and I understand that. But that becomes a domino effect going down the line, because it has to be backed up by someone. And then that gets handed down to your inspectors, all of you people that you haven't on the payroll, so to speak, for lack of a better word, to take care of these things.
As a developer, in your opinion, where's the right now? I mean, we're looking at our system, I guess, because we were trying to improve. what do you find the problems or bottlenecks that you're experiencing?
Well, for one thing, we've already instilled into the operation a checklist.
Okay.
And that checklist already consists of a lot of new testing as far as proof roll required before this, before that. You have to proof roll dirt before you can cut lime. But there are no specifications written into that of what you're going to proof roll it with. I can proof roll it with a bicycle or a loaded dump truck. I mean, you know, if you're going to put specifications on it, you have to put the whole thing out there. And then once again, we're running against a time frame out there, gentlemen. We're fighting weather. We're fighting time frames. We're spending money. Every time you call for an inspection, then you have to get set up on the list, so to speak. And then when you do get everything set up, you're hoping to be there in time to do that. And then if there's one piece of paper out of whack, then you get shut down and got to reschedule everything again. Mother Nature really doesn't wait for you to reschedule. So it's just something that really needs to be streamlined. We have in no way, shape, or form said that the regulations don't need some critiquing. But just adding new rules and regulations that stretch the system out further and further and further is not the answer to it. We are asking to have input in this thing and try to give y'all what y'all want based upon professional ideas and a group of people from all walks of it. You know, what I stand up here and say as a developer, I may have a contractor out there that critiques what I just said and said, hey, Bubba, you're making my costs go up. You know, it needs to be input from every aspect of it if you're going to try to change it and make it a better system.
Any comments? Questions? Okay. Thank you. Mr.
Yeah.
Hold up.
The only comment I have, I thought that's really what we was coming here for. I mean, we have kind of a cross-section of everyone, it looks like, some
Yeah,
builders,
that's what we want to
contractors,
get.
everything. If we have specific problems, let's start from the first one and let's start beating them down and talking through them and lining this stuff out. Let's not just sit here and say we need a committee and all. We have a committee. So let's try to go to work tonight and start addressing some of these if y'all ready.
Well, I don't know that we came here prepared for that tonight, to be honest with you. I don't know that we're ready to address every issue there, but we can definitely try to address some of them.
Yeah, let's at least start.
And that was the thing. We had a meeting last month, and that's what we specifically tasked, is to go out, and we want to know specifically what you have problems with, and bring them to us, and let's start addressing them. And whoever needs to be involved, get involved. It was an open invitation to everybody, and we very much specifically had timetables and get your information to Michael Songi, and they could take the information and be ready to respond, to try to work out some compromises, to try to work out something and see what we can do, where we can move forward. We want to try to solve, if we come up with 10 problems tonight, we want to try to solve a couple and try to move or eliminate a couple and try to move on. If there's something that we just can't stick with, then we can come back with that. But to say that we can't just back up from here, and not address anything. I would like to address something specific. I mean, and that's what we asked to do.
All right, well, let's address the dirt work compaction
Okay.
situation, leaving Department of Public Works improvements, which you regulate in this parish, and now you're trying to push that out to start involving private property And now you're dealing with site-specific situations where you're telling the developer and the contractor exactly how he has to do his dirt work on private property, specific sites, whereas you have rules and regulations that, and it's been brought up about rules and regulations based upon the Southern Building Code. Well, the Southern Building Code does have its own rules and regulations, but also the builders are regulated by the Home Warranty Act. So, I mean, we're getting to a point where we're double dipping and we're costing money on both sides of the spectrum. And then you got builders sitting out there that really don't want to pay these high costs in these lots. Well, if my construction is going to continue to go up because I have to meet all these new regulations, now what do you think? I'm going to eat that? No, I'm going to pass that on to the consumer that is a builder.
Bobby, there are some regulations that are, there's been a demand by the people in the parish, obviously, from the standpoint of we started out 2 years ago, people demanding a moratorium on building because they thought it was growing too fast. No one in the council, well, a few of them in the council was interested in a moratorium. The alternative to a moratorium was to going back, and because of people's belief across the board that we were too lax toward developers and builders and everything else, and we know that's not necessarily always the case, but I'm talking about from the standpoint of people wanted to get it more under control. That was a very loud spoken voice of the people of the parish. And so our intent was to try to do something that we would, if we did have development, it would definitely be the best development we could possibly have. It would definitely be inspected the way, so that the laws and rules and regulations we had would be fair. We're getting into areas that we're having very, very not the best land that we're developing now, because that's all been taken, and so we're dealing in drainage issues everywhere we go. We see from obviously from the hurricane and everything and subsidence that we need to address a whole lot of new issues now within the parish for hurricane protection. And so the overall drainage issues and subdivision regulations and all have gotten to be where we really do have to get something and get it under control, and get it under control as quickly as possible. And it's not going to be something that everybody's going to like or adhere to, or I mean, not where everybody's going to adhere to, but we're not going to be enamored with. So we try to have to, get something that's a medium somewhere. That's what we're attempting to do for the benefit of everybody. The compaction, I'd like us to address this compaction because Carrie had brought it up before, and who wants to address that? Laverne, or you, or Michael?
Well, I think Carrie's issue is not so much in the detail of the specification, but whether or not, whether or not it should be addressed at all. And I mean, the point of the matter is, if you go to build a house and you're not doing your electrical right, then I presume the permit office has the power to stop you. And so, contrary to your argument, the parish does have the right to step into private property and make sure that construction is being done properly to protect the homeowner. And this is no different than that. We're saying that if somebody's going to go slop a bunch of muck on a lot and think that
Mike, hold your microphone. Your mic. Yeah.
If someone's going to go slop a bunch of mud on a lot and just so that some homeowner finds out about it 10 years later when his slab cracks, and for us to turn our eyes and not be in a position to comment or say anything about it. Anybody can make their own judgment call. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
For the benefit of everyone, what do we have now, and what changes are we proposing?
We have nothing. We have nothing now.
We have nothing.
We
now,
have
so
right. And what's happening? Every subdivision is building retention ponds, And a lot of properties in the flood zone. Therefore, the average subdivision will have 2, 3, 4 feet of fill, sometimes 5 or 6. And so, that's what starts to be a problem when you're allowing this amount of fill, and someone's going to build a home on it in the years to follow. And the question comes: is the parish liable when that person's slab cracks? We're out there watching the roads be constructed. We're watching them dig these ponds, but we don't have any say-so on how the material gets placed on the lots. The permit office has the ability to inspect a foundation when it's poured, a framing, all the other components of the house, but yet we don't have the right to look at how the earthwork was the most important part, how the earthwork was placed. So I presume that's his argument, is this whole component of the earthwork specification need to be there.
Well, I disagree with Michael to the respect that I do not disagree with the fact that we need something done and we need it done right. But you already have your engineering review agency in your to-date specifications has a lot of power to control that sort of stuff.
No, we don't. That's why we're writing this. It's not, there is no, if I were to start enforcing it, then I would come back and they'd say, well, what are we supposed to do? What we're trying to do here is to write some specifications that we can all live with. If you're saying I have the power and you want me to walk out on that site and say, all right, I got to see 95% everywhere and I want 2,000 tests, we'll start that tomorrow. But I don't think that's the right thing to do. So I'm trying to write a specification that we can all agree with. If you think I have the power, then we don't need the council to approve the specifications.
But how do we handle all the extra steps, Michael? That is my problem.
What extra steps?
The extra steps of all the testing lab reports and all of this stuff, and then
I'll be happy to talk about that with you, Kerry, but that has nothing to do with these specifications here.
Well, yes, it does.
Because these. Where does this, and this seems to be coming back as a contention more and more. Where does this become a problem, Mr. Kerry? What?
Well, it becomes a problem when you've got contractors out there on a time frame, and I'm on a time frame too, because I'm sitting paying interest on this money.
What can we do? I mean, from the standpoint of the parish, in an ideal situation, if you could follow those guidelines in an ideal situation that you could get, what can we do?
Well, I feel personally that it can be worded to some type of way that, yes, I am responsible for putting it in properly, but not that I have to shut my contractor down and run tests and compaction tests on every 12-inch lift that I put on a 330-acre site out there. Site-specific on a little 10-acre site, or
Are we asking you to do that? Are we asking them to do that?
Well, basically the way it's worded, you are. I can put 12-inch lift on my entire site, but then I have to have all the compactions in place and the paper trail everywhere out there and everybody happy before I can put another lift of dirt on this site.
Why don't we go through the specific, what it specifically said, instead of saying, oh, we doing that?
Okay. Well,
Let's
Mr.
read it
Rivera.
and talk about it.
The compaction tests are required on 10% of these lots, not all of them. And the lift of the compaction is specified in bringing in certain
Okay,
lifts.
we're on field quality control, right? 3.07?
Earth, yeah.
Right.
That's right.
It says an approved testing service shall inspect and approve subgrades and fill layers before further construction work is performed. Initial field density test shall be performed on a random selection of 10% of the lots in a subdivision. If any test result from an initial 10% falls below the required density, then an additional randomly selected number of lots equaling 50% of the total lot count shall be tested. If any test from the next 50% falls below the required density, then all remaining lots shall be tested. All costs for testing, retesting, remediation to achieve the required density shall be borne by the developer.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Mr. Laverne, do they have a section in here that talks about each particular lift? We didn't say anything about a lift, and Mr. Carey did. Where's that section at? And let's talk about that.
I think there's a point there that says 3% each time greater than the lift prior to, up to a maximum
The
of
question
1.
is whether it has to be tested every
5%.
lift, and the answer to that would be yes. But it's 12-inch lifts. If you have 3 feet of fill, you would have a set of tests on each lift.
Each lift at 10% of those particular lots.
So you're talking about 2B is what Mike is saying?
well-
Imported fill material for general site fill shall be lean
Well,
grade.
even in 307A, it says, shall inspect and approve grades and fill layers. In other words, it's saying that you need to test it at each layer.
Okay. So we're testing at each layer, and layers of 12-inch layers?
Yeah.
So every 12 inches, they have to run a test
On 10%.
on 10% of the lots.
To be
What's that?
subjected randomly. Who makes that determination?
The
Who
testing
tells
lab.
me what lots to
Testing lab.
pick?
The testing lab is doing it.
What happens if one of them fails on the first lift at 3%? Does it all turn to 50% at that point, Michael?
Yes, it does.
For every lift continual?
No, it would be for that lift. We want to make sure that that lift
Right, but
is
it doesn't
correct.
say that, correct?
Can we change that?
That could be
Make it
added.
specific. That's a good point. Let's get the wording in exactly like, we want to make sure your fears are addressed.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Sanjay, I got a question. One of the concerns from Mr. Arsenault was getting held up in the construction process. Say I have 3 lifts, I do 1 lift, we got to stop everything, we got to do our testing, come back after the second lift, do the same process over and over. Well, I've built a couple houses before where we had multiple lifts, and we was able to dig a 1 by 1 foot hole to each lift. So can we do that at the end, or? Because
Yeah.
Delta does it like that. I mean,
I
that way we won't hold up construction.
I think what he's referring to is the checklist where we require inspections on the base of the road that's being constructed. This particular testing, it doesn't matter. I mean, he's going to do it as his earthwork is proceeding. So I don't see where this would not have any bearing on his procedure of putting in sewer, drainage, lime, or your roadway. This could happen before, it could happen after, during. So I don't see where,
But you're
I don't
talking
see
about-
where this particular.
He's talking about for testing for his pads,
He's,
the different lifts for the pads.
that's correct, and what I'm saying is, I think he's referring to some different issues about the checklist. That this earthwork, the timing of it's going to be dependent on when the contractor does it. I mean, we're not going to be dictating when the contractor has to do the dirt work on the lots.
Is there any changes that need to be made to make it more convenient?
Well, I don't understand how we can go about doing it and doing it the way it's written right there without it being a real time consuming issue, and it's going to get to be a very expensive issue. And I still disagree with it. I don't think Michael and I are going to come to any agreement on this because he feels differently about it than I do. But
What,
you know, you're
What-
still controlling my construction out there when you tell me I have to do all of these tests, I have to get all of this paperwork in at every stage of the game. And right now, I've been through this already just with the checklist system, that when I'm ready to do the next step in there, we got this paperwork missing, that paperwork missing, this one didn't get it, that one didn't get it, the testing lab says it's in it. So it's already a problem, and we haven't gotten into this yet.
Well, that's a whole separate issue than what we're
Yeah.
talking about here today, and I don't mind debating it, but that's a whole separate, completely different issue than what the content of these specifications are.
Well, maybe it is,
But-
Michael, but you're adding more and more of that in these new specifications.
and Mr. Songier is right from his standpoint, and Mr. Carey is right from his standpoint, because it's sort of like if you if you had a problem with your mechanics working on your car and you build something into your car that causes you to have more mechanic work, you're going to have more and more problems. And so even though it's a different issue, and I agree with you it's different, we do have to address it because down the line it does affect these people, and the parish is somewhere along the line apparently is not meeting the needs to make it in a timely manner, is what I'm hearing here.
And it is a problem.
And so
Kent.
we would like to work this issue on this issue, but we would also like you to bring up your other issues that you have so that we can address those issues also. If we have to do something, if we have to institute some new policies or hire new people or help you out in some kind of way, our aim as a council is to protect the people from the standpoint of making sure that they have good developments and everything's done proper and everything, and see that it's inspected properly. And in turn, make sure that we streamline things for the developer and everything where they can come in, they know up front. That's what we tasked Mr. Sonia to do. We want developers to know when they walk in here, they know up front what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. It's black and white. And then the other thing is get it done in a timely manner. And if we have a problem with inspections in a timely manner or anything like that, then we need to address that as a council. And we would ask you to stay on us about that, and we will address that issue to make sure that you are taken care of as a business person in Ascension Parish, that you're being taken care of from that standpoint. But that's fair also. So if those are some needs that we need to do, we'd like to address them separately, but they are
Well, they are very closely tied together, Kent.
Yes.
Because we're having problems with what we have now, and if you can continue to add more and more steps and more testing and more paper trail, it's only going to just pile up further and further until you're going to get to a point to where you bog completely down in paperwork and a paper trail, and you can't get your job done for it.
I'm Billy Aguilar. I own RBB Construction in Prairieville. Since we're talking about dirt, and dirt happens to be one of my pet peeves, if you don't mind, if we'll continue talking about
Yeah.
the dirt specification a little bit, and then I'd like to go back on the general and say something else. But I got a question for Mr. Laverne first, and I'd like to know, Mr. Laverne, what building code has the parish specifically adopted?
The 2003 RC, which is International Residential Code.
The 2003 RRC is, from all the research that I've done, as far as I can find, is this the 2000 IBC code, and all addendums that the 2000 IBC is what the parish council has already accepted. I can't find anywhere that the parish council has accepted the 2003 RRC code.
Yes, they have.
They have?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the IBC, the NEC, the mechanical code, the electrical code. It's all accepted, but you have to be
If we go back and to tell you where the homeowner should be protected with the soil conditions, if you go, and I don't have the RRC code with me, excuse me, Mr. Vernon, but I do have the IBC code, 2003 IBC code in front of me. But basically, it says that the owner or the applicant shall submit a foundation and soil investigation to the building official for his foundation design. Specifically says that. It also says the building official can waive it if some of the dirt on adjacent sites has been tested and equals everything that's in this code. And this isn't just one page. We're talking about 500-something pages here, and all this refers to is 663 pages in this code. And in this particular chapter here, there are roughly 25 pages that talk specifically about soils and foundations. And it's for the builder or the homeowner to prove to the building official that the soil on his lot will hold up his foundation. Now, and going back to these specifications that they just drew up here, some of the things in here, and this is a quote on 302 backfill and compaction, paragraph B. The moisture content at time of the compaction shall be within 3% of optimum value as defined in ASTM D698. The moisture content and density shall be maintained until construction is complete. There's no way in a world that we can maintain moisture content and density while we work on the subdivision for 6 months. It's impossible. Can't be done. You just can't do it. It says if we bring in imported fill, it says it's got to be at a plasticity index between 15 and 25 with a maximum liquid limit of 40. It's almost impossible to find that dirt in Ascension Parish. So if we build a subdivision, we got to bring imported fill, and we can't get dirt from Ascension Parish to build the lots up because we can't get it in Ascension Parish. It says we're supposed to maintain the site in all newly graded areas from traffic or erosion or whatever, and we have to repair, reestablish grades, and settle in eroded areas before the subdivision is finished, before it even gets accepted, when it's really not necessary. When we can go on and on and on and on, and I guess, gentlemen, what Mr. Arsenault said is a group of us got together, a bunch of engineers, contractors, Saul's Foundation people, asphalt people. We all sat down and combined this letter that hopefully all of y'all have gotten and have read. And in our opinion, these specifications are a start, but they don't address all the situations, and specifically, they don't address the subdivision construction checklist. None of this is represented in this specification. So what we basically saying is we want to get together and help, and I think there's about 10 of us here that will volunteer to help write a set of specifications that will address all of these items. We can work out some of these saw compaction requirements. And that, of course, that's my particular pet peeve. Everybody else has their own. But we don't feel like that this specification addresses everything that needs to be addressed. One thing, it says nothing at all about curb and gutter. There's no detail on the curb and gutter specification here at all. Everybody's using a different mold to make curb and gutters. I happen to have the only mold that has the curb and gutter designed to DOT specs in the parish, and I'm the only one that's using it. Nobody else is using it. There's a rollover curb that has a spill out and a catch in it, and what they're all doing is, instead of having a 2-inch flat on the top, they're all making it at a point, and they take it and they roll it this way to make it a spill out curve, or they rolling it that way to make it a catch curve. Nobody's using the correct curbs. Nobody in this parish is. That's not even addressing this at all. So what we're asking is that that y'all form a committee, give us some guidelines. We'd be more than happy to help Mr. Sanji or whoever is going to be chairman of the committee put together a set of specifications that addresses everything and all the needs that we need to do to make a better subdivision for everybody in this parish.
And your concerns are just what you said there?
Well, it's everything. I mean, we can go through this whole thing, and there's probably, out of all of us, we can come up with a comment on every paragraph in this whole specification of something we feel is wrong with it. And instead of trying to address every individual item in this, we figured we'd be here for 2 weeks talking to y'all, trying to tell y'all everything that's wrong with this. We just feel like we need to all get together and form a committee, and we'll help y'all, we'll help whoever write these specifications. And again, if you don't want to talk about dirt, I'll talk to you about dirt all day long, because that just happens to be my pet peeve. I mean, I've always
And y'all would be willing to go through this?
I'd be willing to go through it and sit down with anybody if they'll listen to us. And Kerry was on the last committee, and Kerry, you tell me if I'm wrong. Kerry was trying to give comments, and they basically told him it didn't matter what he said. They wasn't going to take any of his comments.
I'm going to take exception to that.
And I'm not talking about you, Michael, but I'm talking
Well,
about
you are talking about me, but that's okay. I take exception to that statement.
Actually, I'd like a little clarification on that, too.
There were several concessions made from Mr. Arsenault, so I just want to set the record clear.
I'm just repeating what Kerry told me. Is that true or not, Kerry?
If I may, I'd like to add something.
Hold up, we're gonna address it one at a time.
This started in the subdivision ordinance committee, which I chair,
Right.
back in August. At that August meeting, there were two individuals who showed up, Kerry Arsenault and Wayne Sledge.
Nope.
No.
I'm sorry.
I specifically asked Michael Sanji who he emailed, who he contacted. And he told me he emailed and contacted several developers and engineers. Now, I'm not going to go and double-check Michael Sanji on everything. All through this process, I have touched base with him trying to find out what kind of feedback he has gotten on this issue. From start to finish, I didn't get as much feedback as I was hoping to. When this issue came back before the commission, finally said, well, I got more feedback, so I think I've resolved all the issues. I never saw any of you at any of our meetings. They were publicly announced, and Mr. Arsenault and Mr. Sledge told us that they were going to talk to individuals and get them to show up at the meeting. Now, there was a working meeting on Columbus Day, I think. Mr. Sanji and I had a conversation about that meeting. And what he told me was he felt good. They had some people that showed up for that, and there were some comments made. Now, this thing of people's comments haven't been listened to, I don't believe that for 1 minute. We held a public hearing on this in the Planning Commission meeting. Nobody showed up to talk against it. Nobody. Now, if you don't show up at a commission meeting and voice your opposition, the commission is going to assume there is no opposition. And the public is noticed for all of our meetings.
Excuse me, it's my fault. I didn't read the notices. I wasn't notified that they had meetings. I wasn't invited to be on a committee. I volunteered to be on a committee.
Billy, let me say this. When these specifications were drafted, they were sent on at least 2, maybe 3 occasions to every consulting engineer that's doing business in this parish, to every contractor that I was aware of doing business with this parish. I sent them through Charles Becknell, who sent them to every developer that he knew was doing business in the parish. We made an attempt. If you want to know the facts and the bottom line, we want to speak honestly here, because I know a lot of you personally, and I respect all of you. But the bottom line is nobody took the time to review this stuff until it got to the council, and then there's a problem. And that's okay. That's okay. But please don't stand up here and say that this was done in a vacuum without input. I had comments from Barber Brothers. I have comments from Ferris Engineering, Mr. Sledge, and who else? I mean, we had several comments on this thing, and corrections were made all the way along the line. Now, you know, we can say what we want, but I just want the record to be straight that this was not done with the intention of it. You're making it. It's making it sound as if we tried to keep this in a vacuum. That's not what happened. We were begging for input. Bottom line is nobody wanted to take the time to go through it and make the comments. And so you're asking for a committee moving forward. That's fine. I'll spend the time. But we also sat a month ago with all these problems, and I asked specifically, y'all tell us what the problems are. They were supposed to be in Friday, which I didn't receive anything. I got an email this morning. There are 4 specific comments dealing with the specifications. There's a whole bunch of stuff about what my authority is, and that I have more authority and shouldn't even need these. And there's some comments about issues that are part of the subdivision ordinance, like thickness of asphalt and other issues. But as far as the specification, there's 4. So I keep hearing all these comments, but nobody's, I mean, you think about the curb and gutter, that's great, but I've never known it was an issue. You know? So how can we react if we don't get communication that tells us what the problems are?
I guess my fault. I apologize. I didn't mean to offend anybody, but it's my fault that I didn't.
Can I say one
Yes,
thing?
sir.
Because we can go back and forth. Our experience on the Planning Commission, on the council and everything, and in all fairness, everybody's busy. Let's face the facts. Michael, I do know, Michael, the people in administration, the people at Planning Commission has worked their tail off on this. And
No
have
doubt.
really
No doubt.
worked hard to try to get input and get people involved. But the fact of the matter is, just like zoning or just like anything else, until it hits home, because it takes hours, it takes a lot of you guys' time that don't get, you know, that you have other important things to do. Until it hits home right now, and it's the bottom line, it's the last time it comes before the council, you really don't get to the details. And you're thinking maybe it'll get changed, and so that's human nature. And so from our standpoint, we understand that. All right, we don't like it to happen that way, but that's just the way it is. And as Michael said, what we want as a council is just to make sure we get it right.
I understand that.
And we were trying to look. We had a meeting last month. We were hoping to get, as you said, that you could go down and you could change something and everything. I was hoping to get this back by a bunch of people that had some lines crossed out and make suggestions and everything, that we could go out and really make some progress on working on it. And we haven't really got that. That's where we're at. Now, we can call. I would be, if we just talked about it, and I talked with Michael before, and Michael. We got a lot of Michaels here now. We could call 3 working meetings or 5 working meetings and sit down at a table. We'd be glad to do that. If we knew that we had people that would come over here and sit down and offer suggestions and work to try to get it the way it's supposed to be. But what we don't want to go to the point that we're going to spend another 3 or 4 weeks or months and call some working meetings and not get the input that we need and to actually make it better. If we're not making it better, then there's no use for us to do that. And so
I'll be more than happy to volunteer. I was not invited to be on the last committee. I didn't know about it. The only time I found out about this is the last meeting when it came up for a public hearing. I happened to read the docket, and that's why we showed up.
What is your suggested process? That's the other thing.
What we'd like to do, and I'll be on the committee. I'll get my son, who's a civil engineer, to be on the committee too, wherever he's at, Brian. I think Mr. Philippi would volunteer to be on the committee with us. I'm sure there's 2 or 3 other people here. Mr. Shakes and Mr. Arsenault will be on the committee with us. Whoever whoever wants to volunteer, I'm sure we can get 5 or 6 people right now to volunteer. But what we'd like is the opportunity to sit down and review and go with this thing word by word. I think we could stay here for 12 hours today and just read the thing. I think, and I'll volunteer my time anytime they want to do it. Anywhere they want to meet, just tell me where to be, and I'll be there.
Mr. Laverne, I think you had something to say.
I just wanted to address one comment made by Mr. Billy about the compaction as requirements in the building code. It also specifies how to place engineered fill, and that's by lift of certain measures and compact it and go on to the next process. I mean, I wouldn't want to embarrass the man, but I got pictures can show how they're doing it right now. And this subdivision is involved in right now. And they're certainly not to the standards that we should have been let be put in. And I just want to let him know, he's a dirt expert. But I don't think I want to build a house on a spot where I see 12 foot of fill at, and the way it's being put in. And that's just my opinion on this part. I'm the building official. I got a responsibility to hold the line for compaction requirements for buildings. If I really want to hold it to the line, yeah, you talk about cost. It would really cost a homeowner or individual an extraordinary amount of money to do a full-blown soil investigation on a subdivision that should be started out and based off simply. And we try to compromise, as Michael made that comment on the other meeting, that, yeah, I didn't get all the results that I want out of it, but I'm really laxing a bunch. The parish could be putting a liability to say because we're doing this. I think the parish would be in a greater liability if we didn't make the compaction for a home to be built on. So
one thing I want everybody to know, we are getting, I have been getting from authorities as you go through Jefferson and St. Charles, St. John, St. James and everything, and getting to the point where it's been recommended on a lot of places to put pilings. And we're getting to that point that we're building on lands that need to be piled, and so we are, and you just said it, you can't find dirt in Ascension Parish that meets specifications, and these are minimum specifications, basically.
That's right.
And so what do? Do we allow sub-housing to be built, foundation to be built that is going to fail? Because that's what they did in Jefferson Parish and Kenner and Metairie and everything. They fail it.
We all do it every day.
Or do we do what by the law, by the true law to those books says that will really cost everybody? We're trying not to put people at a cost disadvantage? Or do we make a compromise, which I think we're close at, that we hopefully can live with, that is realistic for Ascension Parish? And according to the building officials and Michael, we have compromised. And I think if you really read those specifications that you're talking about, if we followed that to the T.
Well, you couldn't only build a house in this parish,
And that's,
unless you did a post-tension slab, and you get an engineer to specifically design that particular slab.
Kent,
But
even
that's
with a
basically what it says that we
even
should
with
do.
that,
Even with a post-tension slab, it required you to do a compaction test.
It does. It requires you to do a compaction test if it's expansive clays. 90% of the soil in the Ascension
is
Parish is
expansive
expansive
clays.
And
clays.
it elaborates to the fact that it voids the warranty if you didn't do it.
That's-
On a
that's
post-tension
correct.
slab. Some
That's right.
people may not read that. And Billy, I'm here to help you, but on the other hand, I'm here also hard to protect the parish
I understand.
residents.
And hey, look, I
building
want
a house.
If you're talking about and let me make one comment to Mr. Vernon. Mr. Vernon, if you're talking about the one subdivision I happen to be building in Ascension Parish, there's only one that I'm doing right now. But Louisiana Testing did compaction tests on the last 3 lifts, and there was none of them that were below 96% standard compaction. Okay, I have the test results at my office if you'd like to see them.
Good.
So I do try to compact my subdivisions to at least a 95. But should it be a requirement that we do a 300-acre or a 200-acre or a 50-acre subdivision? I say no.
Well, you're not doing that much. You compact it, but you're only testing 10% of it.
I
Only
agree.
10% of your lots, and I think that's a way. I'm bending way far backwards to assess you in what your requirements.
If one
need
of them
to be.
fails, we go to 50%. But if all
Well,
it
I
has to
think
do
that
is
could be
rain on us
worked
one
on. I
time,
got
and
to
that one's
agree
going
with
to
that.
fail.
I think that could be worked on. And I
See,
also,
that's what we want to do is let's work out.
I also think we could work on the fact that, as Kent talked about earlier, if you do a compaction test, that you could do it in stages. You wouldn't have to totally stop your job. You could, cut down a foot to the next area, 1, 2, or 3 feet, because that's how they actually do it. Some of these just individual lots where they build a pad for a home, and your testing guy comes in and does that for you
Right.
in a couple phases. But if
Let me
that can
mention
help you, I
something
had no problem with that.
The compaction. I'm Ronnie Daigle with RJ Daigle.
Yeah, Ronnie.
We build roads, and we've been building them for the parish for a long time. One of the problems with what he's saying is getting compactions. Every time we build a road, whatever we build, we start with the drainage system up. Every time we get compaction, we have to cover it up and work our way up. When we do a proof road, we cut lime, we run densities, we cut cement, we cover it up, all the way to the top. And when we compact in these lots for filling, it's useless. What's dense today is not any good tomorrow. It means nothing. In the building code, if you require a builder to get a 95% inside those forms, as soon as he gets 95%, he's going to pour concrete there. It's covered. It's done. But to ask us to get 95% means nothing. All it means is greater liability on the parish. Because you requested 95% on what? I'll get it today. Tomorrow we're going to run dump trucks on it. There's no more density. But I got paperwork that's saying it's good. So it's not a common sense solution.
use your mic so we can record it. I'm sorry.
It's not, I mean, it sounds great, but it's not a common sense solution. Now, the builder's required to get 95%. I guarantee you, as soon as he puts those forms up and receives 95%, he's pouring concrete. Then you got a true 95% underneath those forms.
All right, so what's your
Otherwise-
suggestion?
See, we not.
Well, that's why the building code was written the way it was. So the builders had to achieve 95%. Because if I achieve 95% on top of dirt, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Until and listen, if I'm going to build a road on top of that 95%, I promise you the next day I'm going to start my next process. So it's a senseless, I can understand the problem, but it's a senseless ordinance because it just puts greater liability on you. Because once I achieve that 95%, a hurricane can come through there and I'm done with it. And it just doesn't make any sense.
Mr. Laverne, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, I respect the gentleman's comments, but you're only doing 10% of your lots. And that's only representative of your site, that you actually do an engineered practice as required by engineered practice to build a pad to place a home on. We're not saying that you're going to be responsible for it. We're saying that you got to show and document to the parish that you're actually doing a percentage of the work as a document representative of your whole site. Now, for a homeowner who's going to build a house, he's a builder, they're still required to come behind you. But if you got 5 or 6 foot of fill and he comes in there and we ain't been representative of the whole site, he has to go get I'm requiring him, he has to go get an investigation, which costs, I don't know, $1,200, $1,500, I don't know what it costs. But it's a lot less to just what Billy said, I have the authority to give some sort of variances in an alternate method, how we can control and help everybody. Now, that's my part that I see for compaction is required. A builder's going to be required by the homeowners, the Home Warranties Act of 1986, it used to be 10 years, went down to 7, now it's 5. So we're not getting much guarantee of a foundation being held up as it used to be. So I'm just here trying to protect both the public and what the parish is supposed to be. As I said before, there's a liability to the parish to begin with. I think there's a liability to the parish worse if we don't make it happen.
Well, and again, everything that we do in this parish, you guys are liable for it, and you know it. It doesn't matter what goes on. I think what he says sounds good. It's just not practical. It just doesn't make sense to do that because, again, if I get densities on it today, you may not have it tomorrow. As soon as we restore, whatever, it floods, whatever, you don't have densities anymore. That's why I think, and that's why it's written to be in the building code. Because once those guys put those forms up, they get densities, they cover it up with concrete. Then you have your densities.
You can work on a specific lot for a foundation with a 60 by 60 foundation for a house, but we're talking about 300 acres that we're working on.
Right,
And it's
right.
almost impossible for us to keep that thing at 95 for the duration of the project when we're working on a project for 6 months, and that's what it says we got to do in here.
No, it doesn't.
Is that?
It does. It says it shall be
It's
maintained.
saying
No,
it's saying you
actually-
put in a lift.
You're
Excuse
right.
me, hold up, hold
saying
on. We had a statement that was made, Mr. Songe, you need to
It's
respond.
saying you put in a lift and you get it tested. We're not saying that you have to maintain that for any period of time. It just says you have a lift, unless you're seeing something.
I agree with you. I do agree.
But, so we're not going to go. I mean, you're going to
I
have
agree
a.
that's what the intent of it should be, but that's not what it says.
Well, tell us. I mean, that's the
I'm going to read
intent.
it to you. It says, the moisture content at time of compaction should be within 3% of the optimum value as defined in ASTM D698. The moisture content and density shall be maintained until construction is complete. That's paragraph B in section 302.
Which page, 302?
302.
The base course
Page
on the road.
On the backfill and compaction on the earthwork section.
All right, that can be changed. I mean, the intent is we're going to test it after the lift is in to make sure that proper procedures were
How
used.
can you make a suggestion on that change that represents what we're talking about?
Strike the sentence.
I mean, the parish can get burned on that just as well as.
We understand that.
And listen, I'm not talking about the homeowner. I'm not talking about liability-wise. I'm just saying, once he achieves 95%, he don't care about it at that point. He's did his
We
paperwork.
understand that, but at least at one time, we've achieved 95%, we're not out there at 55%, that's it. At least we've done something, and we've had a minimum thing that, we know right now, we're not going to what we can do with geotechs would actually recommend houses to be built as, because we're in Ascension Parish and we're in a delta, a river delta, let's face it. And so what we're trying to do is get a good compromise that developers, builders, and residences can live with. And we can say that we've done what we can to ensure that people get protected. That's where we are. We know we're liable, but we're also not going to hold you liable for weather and things of that sort that come up. We don't want to hold you back. So let's put it in the wording. Your concern was that it had to be maintained. And so we want to change that so that once you do your job and you did what you're supposed to do, that's it. Then we move on.
And again, this is just one example of like I say, in every part of this specification, there's the same little problems like that. And to be able to sit here tonight or whatever, to tell y'all each one of these little things would take us forever. And that's why we're asking that y'all form a little committee and let us
Okay.
sit down and help y'all.
I think,
One
yeah.
specific.
Mr. Hillenbeck.
Thank you. Yeah, I got the input. I had several emails, received them today, and of course I got them late, so I didn't have a chance to study them. Back to the issue of the testing, when one in 10 houses that you test fails. Okay, I agree with you. 50% probably is unreasonable to go test beyond that. But what is reasonable? What do you suggest? Should we do?
Well, when we build in a road
Yeah.
for the parish,
Right.
if we have a density fail, we'll move within 6 feet of it and take another test,
Yeah.
which is standard procedure. We don't increase the number of tests by
Right.
any.
Right. Okay. Well,
That gets
Billy,
extreme.
what would you recommend? What is reasonable? I mean, what's
That's basically what we do, the same thing, too. If we have one fail, we plow the ground up and we recompact it, and we kind of test within the same general area, not necessarily on the same site. But I guess what we're saying here is that, we're not testing, whatever we test and whatever it comes out, it's still the responsibility of the builder to make sure that that specific lot is at that compaction.
Once we get that 95%.
Even if we have 95%, I mean, 6 months later when he goes to build a house, it's still his responsibility to make sure it's at that 95%. And to be all honest with you, it's not going to be.
Right.
It's not going to be at night. If it rains on it 3 or 4 times, with the clay soils we have, it's not going to be at that compaction.
Billy, they got some good contractors.
They
You
do.
know, it's just like everything else. Codes and laws and rules are for those that, don't practice the good practices. But the fact of it is, if, say, for instance, you had some lots out there that didn't meet the standards when a homeowner come in there, he has to deal with 5 or 6 foot of soil. So it costs him to go out there and do compaction, a full-blown soil investigation, and design a foundation, maybe even pilings or post tension or whatever to hold his building up, the weight of his building, because that's what this is all about, holding that weight of that building. So I don't know if a builder can deal with that much as well, or even say a homeowner, when the time is to do it when you begin it, from the very get-go.
Mr. Laverne, I know what you're saying, and again, the problem is if I'm a building a house, and I used to build a house. I quit building houses 10 years ago. But if I was building a house and I knew that lot had 6 foot of fill on it, before I bought the lot, I would hire a soils engineer to go out there and do me a soils test on it.
And Billy, that's another deal. I heard a statement made that the developers or contractors said they're not responsible for soil conditions. I even seen it on a plat, which I think shouldn't be put on a plat that the parish signs off on, that the developer or contractor is not responsible for soil conditions. Because in essence, that's putting the parish in a liability for sure.
Any purchase agreement, and that's what was in
But
there.
that's a purchase agreement, not on the plat, though.
But any purchase agreement that a developer sells a lot on, if it's raw land, and there's a bunch of realtors in here, there's always a section there that excludes soil conditions. So it basically takes them out of the liability line. So the developer's not going to be liable for it at all.
Well, maybe we need to rewrite that. Because if
That's a
they're-
contract, that's a contractual obligation between the developer who's selling the lot and the buyer who's buying the lot. The buyer doesn't have to buy the lot.
That's
don't
fine
have to buy
on
the
a
lot.
contract, but I don't think it should be on a plat.
Yeah,
The parish is signing off
Yeah,
on.
that's what we were talking about.
Right.
About it not being on the plat, because ultimately it may get you out of some
Yeah.
civil liability, but it's with the
It-
parish.
Yeah. If it's on the parish, it takes the parish out of the liability too. I would have sworn the parish gets sued for anything anyway, but.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, one other issue that's a recurring issue in the emails I received, it was DPW's input as far as the new subdivision regulation requirements, building requirements. Have we had their input?
When we started this
Inspectors?
process, there was a committee that Keith worked with Department of Public Works, C.J. Godan,
B.J. Lambert,
B.J. Lambert,
Dennis,
Laverne's really with
with
planning,
Dennis
but-
Babin.
and the inspectors, both subdivision inspectors and road inspectors. And
Right.
it was drafted, this specification was originally drafted with the input of the comments from those entities. So yes, they were involved in the very beginning.
Right.
All right, are they involved in it now? Because we keep hearing
Well, they've-
from
I'm
Planning
sure they've
Commission,
seen,
from the
I'm
developers,
sure
that
they've seen-
DPW is not involved in any of this now. Mr. Laverne.
Every pre-construction conference that we have, they invited to come. CJ, Bill Rue, BJ Lambert, and they also, when Michael does construction drawing reviews, I think he brings it back to CJ for input from DPW.
No.
No.
No? Are you still?
They invited to
Never
come.
mind.
Do they come and do they have input and do they have,
Sir?
do they come and do they have input with what y'all do and decide?
Yeah, and they come on our final inspections too.
So they're in there the whole
They're in the loop,
process from
yeah.
administration.
They invited every time to come on it. I mean, routine inspection on a day-to-day basis. No, they're not too much involved. Unless it's something specific, we go ask them about to come check a rear swell ditch or, and their last comment to us was they didn't want the trees on any of the drainage servitudes that they'd have to come back and deal with after a house is built, or where the roots destroy the intent of the back swell.
So in your opinion, they're adequately involved in the process?
I put it this way, they involve as much as they can't come and help us when we're out there.
I think the question in that letter refers to, were they involved in the process of helping to develop
Yes, they were.
this?
Yeah, they sure
From
were.
the very beginning.
Very first meeting.
Yes, sir. They were involved.
They've had a chance to review each successive iteration of changes to the specifications as well.
I think everybody, yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a suggestion. I think they have a good idea in forming a committee,
Well-
and let's delay this thing.
Michael
over.
has some suggestions on
Okay, but maybe let them put those recommendations together, page by page, item by item, give it back to us. Let's give them another 30 days or 60 days. I just don't feel like we're ready to move forward to 49.
Yeah, we want to, Michael, I think you had some suggestions.
Well,
on this.
I think Doug's close. Just in the interest of time, when you start to try to involve several people on these things, it breaks down. Because we've got 7 of these ordinances we're trying to do, and I can tell you that's what happens. I think, being what we have been through and the attempts that we've made, I think if y'all want to put together your own committee and study it yourself and come back with some very specific, issues in here, line by line, item by item, as to what the problems are, please do that. But I think that we, at this point, and if y'all need a longer time period than 15 days or however long you had, tell us what you need and come back. But
Hey, Mike, let's do this. Let's not just identify the problem, but we want your recommendation.
That's what I'm saying.
What do you think is fair? What, it's going to be fair to you
And-
as an industry, but
and
also
we had-
fair to the general public that's buying a home.
We had one tonight. I mean, you talked about the maintaining compaction, and that was a specific example, a specific suggestion. Everybody agreed with the intent. We changed it. We moved on. I think that can be done with 90% of the things that we have, and we may disagree on 5 or 10%, and that just may just be a disagreement there that we cannot come to a total agreement on, but we're going to try to come to as much of an agreement on everything. But I think Michael's suggestion is you guys come back with some specific things. If you need to go through line by line, come up with scratches on all of this, and some suggestions in where we can go, and then we can have another meeting, and we can say we agree with this, we don't agree with this, we make.
Who's going to make those decisions on whether or not they're going to go or not? Who's going to make those recommendations on if they can be accepted?
Ultimately, they're going to make recommendations to us, and then we're going to decide whether we're going to accept them or not.
So we're talking about Michael?
Michael and Laverne, and
it's done by
Planning
me, but
Commission.
obviously the document has to pass the
And-
council. So
and
I mean, I'm not.
DPW.
I understand, but they're
we've
gonna
made
take your
several-
recommendations
We've made
on it.
several concessions, but
No.
I mean, at this point, to try to sit down and try to do it with the committee, you're going to spend another 6 months.
Yeah.
Hey,
you know,
and
I
Kent,
guess-
on top of that, I think you need to get the administration to get DPW involved in this as well.
Yeah, I mean, y'all have them
we need
within that.
We need to
Well, I mean, we
prepare.
can certainly take the comments they prepare and review them with DPW, and again, let DPW see whatever changes that we're making. Sure.
Right.
Okay.
I guess our question is the system broken now? Are we having problems out there that we don't know about?
Yes.
Maybe the dirt issue is a problem, but are there other problems out there that we don't know about? Because, I guess we feel like that it's been working pretty good for a while. And why be in such a rush to hurry up and develop this thing when
We're not in a rush, Billy. We've been working on this for about 9 months
and
now.
I understand that, but I have not been invited, and of course, I'm getting into it late, and I apologize for not getting involved in it earlier. And,
I understand.
Yes, this is one of our tasks that we have given them 9 months ago, and we have started meeting during that time. There's been numerous meetings with numerous people, and we're trying to get something in writing for people specifically that addresses Ascension Parish's problems that we can live with. And we're trying to take all of the different documents that are out there that will meet the needs of the people of Ascension Parish.
I guess what we'd like to see is, okay, we can come up with a list of everything that we feel needs to be changed or corrected in this, but can we have an informal meeting, not necessarily a formal public hearing, but an informal meeting with some of the people and review it with them before we come back to a formal public meeting?
That's fine.
That would be fine, but we want you to have some specific things written down, not just say, well, we have problems with this whole thing.
Give us recommendations.
Give us some recommendations, what you have, get your highlighter out and your pen out, and let's go line by line.
Guys, thank you.
We're fine with that.
Yeah, I don't care if we got to read the whole document, but let's start somewhere. Back and forth all night. What we've been doing tonight's not accomplishing
That's my
anything.
comment. Let's hear.
I mean, we could have read half the thing already, probably. I mean, let's go to work.
Yes.
I'm Ron Ferris with Ferris Engineering, and despite the recommendation that this be a unilateral committee on the part of the developers and engineers and everybody else, I think that's unfair. I was one of the ones that responded quite extensively to Mr. Sanji's original deal, and with all due respect, there were a lot of the things that he paid attention to, and they did address in there. However, the things that were not addressed were never discussed past that, and I think to try to do it with one side rather than together, I think that's unfair. I personally have, and I love him to death, but I personally have a lot of objections, a lot of input that I would like to discuss with, I forgot your name. Laverne. I think this is something that needs to be discussed. I'm sorry, I get the problem. But, and I know Mr. Sanji doesn't want to do that. Laverne probably doesn't want to do that either, but I really think that to have us come back and do it and then present it to them to then make a unilateral decision as to whether or not it's going to be included, I think that's unfair.
Well, I mean, that wasn't what we were planning on doing. What we wanted to do is set the groundwork where you would make some suggestions, line by line. We know what you'd make. It would give them time to take a look at how they would make requests on how we should handle that. And then we would come back over here just like we're going, and instead of going through every line of this document, we might have 10 items.
So it would be discussed.
And we could, yeah. And
it would be discussed in this forum.
Yes, because we have to do this in a public meeting. I mean, it's public.
If we're involved
If
and we
we're
have a
involved.
quorum, it has to be a public meeting.
Well, that's fine.
And
I mean,
people
that's,
have to know. And so
that
what
sure
you
beats-
say to Mr. Laverne right here, we're going to say it in the public, and we're going to try to decide the best way to do it.
well, that beats the alternative.
But we need to have. We don't want to take 12 hours up here. We would like you guys to spend a few hours, go through it, and I mean, there were some great suggestions earlier. And, a couple of them have helped already. Write them down, put them down here, try to get them as condensed as possible that we can come. And we're going to start the next time on number 1, and we're going to start and work our way down. And if we finish, we're finished, and if not, we're going to come back again. Question is, can
Y'all tell us what you
you
need.
do it in 2 weeks?
I say give them 30 days.
Let them decide how much time.
What do y'all need? What do you need?
You can't get somebody, all of us have jobs that we
We
don't do this
understand.
for a living. To get people like that together, it's going to take 60 days worth of time at least to get us all together 2-3 times, come up with
we got to get something done before then. I mean, to make another point, I mean, can you come up with some?
Well, I think there's going to be too many issues to tackle it all in one meeting anyway. So let's, in 2 weeks, come back with 5 itemized issues. We'll handle the 5, and then another 2 weeks we'll come back with 5 or 10 or whatever it takes. But just sitting around for 60 days, I don't think is going to work. Yeah. Let's get a few items and work on it in 2 weeks, and then you'll have some more time to get another few items. I mean, we're not going to pass it all, but we can discuss the first 5 and come to a compromise and keep working it that way. But just to wait 60 days, I don't think we can.
There's just so many things that, and I'm just going to give you a couple, for instances. One is the asphalt paving, Michael. You got a 3-wheel roller in there. It needs to come out because nobody uses a 3-wheel roller anymore. But if it stays in there, it means that I got to come to you with my hat in my hand asking you, hey, can I pave the road without a 3-wheel roller? This is no good. We ask that gets taken out. Secondly, in your salt cement, you call for us to mix water, cement all together. It needs to, we think it needs to be that it needs to be injected in the process. And I think it needs to be specific because there's too many guys out there that come out there with a water truck, wet the cement and mix it, and it's not any good. So I think it needs to be injected in place. And a lot of these little simple issues create a big problem for us. Okay. And we really, and as Mr. Laverne said, he says, you know, these specifications are not written for the good guys, they're written for the bad. They're written for us. Mm-hmm. We have to abide by them. Right. So all we want is a good set of specifications that we can abide by.
Please, when you come, I mean, please
mark it up.
Address the information to Michael so that he can have some advance notice. And then come with your paper in hand, and we'll have a list of things to go by. If you have 10 of them, we're going to start with 10.
Mike, let me ask you. I think in
and we'll come back. I'm right. We'll come back.
No, I understand.
If we don't address things, then we'll come back. But we have to get started somewhere
right.
and start knocking this down.
I agree. One of the things that concerns me is the testing aspect. I think everything has to go to the parish. And everything has to be in their hand before we can move forward. But yet when we work for DPW every day building roads, I mean, we'll get densities tested on a roadway. Once that density passes, we look at the machine. Once densities passes, we move on to the next phase. The testing labs then turn them into the engineers who are responsible for getting them to the parish. But it doesn't hold up construction.
Let me explain to everyone what you're referring to and what Kerry referred to. About a year and a half ago, Laverne, the responsibility of construction of subdivisions shifted from the Department of Public Works to the Planning Commission. It wasn't my decision, okay? Somebody else made that decision. And immediately the Planning Commission turned to me and said, can you help us with monitoring construction of subdivisions? I said, yes, we'll do that. The challenge they had was that with limited resources, they have at best 2 inspectors. And we have how many subdivisions going on in this parish? About 35 at a time, easily. We were asked to come up with a routine to follow during construction of subdivisions to try to do the best we could to make sure that testing labs were doing their job. And we did that. And just as this letter points out, I, as the ERA, do have that power, if you want to call it, to make those determinations. And I came up with them. And we've been following them. Now, as much as everyone complains about them, we sit down at a pre-construction conference with the owner, the contractor, and the engineer. And we sit down and we talk about it. And the testing lab is there as well. And we tell them, you're not going to cut line until we've done a proof roll of your bed and you give us the sanitary sewer testing reports. Everybody's in that room nodding their head. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand. And lo and behold, the next thing we know, somebody's cut soil cement. They entirely skipped that first process and jumped all the way, totally disregarding what we've handed out. Now, you can imagine the frustration on our part. And I know that y'all are frustrated too. But the bottom line is, and the developers need to know this, that they need to make sure that their engineer and their testing lab and their contractor are communicating. And the bottom line is they're not. Because the contractors call us up and want a proof roll, and the testing lab hadn't done a thing. I'm going to make a public statement that I've had a couple of testing labs tell me that prior to us becoming involved, they would get calls from contractors at the end of construction, a few days prior to a final inspection, calling the testing lab saying, hey, can you get me my testing reports? Now, you know, that's an extreme way over here. And I've instituted a policy, and yeah, I'll admit, the extreme is way over here on this side. But the bottom line is, we don't have the inspectors to sit out there and watch every job. And we're trying to put some responsibility on the contractor, on the testing lab, and his engineer. And I understand everybody's fussing about it, but we're telling everybody up front what the rules are, but they're getting disregarded. And then so y'all are complaining because we're holding you up. Have I changed those rules, those procedures, Laverne, since they came out? They haven't been changed.
Well, how long have they come out?
Been in effect for a year.
September 9, September
About a year
ago.
and a half now. And if you go to a pre-construction conference, you get those every time.
I've done some work with you. I hadn't had that in Ascension Parish. We didn't have that problem.
You personally may not have attended the meeting, but they're being handed out.
Well,
So, and let me just say, I will be more than happy, and quite frankly, I think more of this issue that we're here today is over this subdivision construction checklist than it is the content of these specifications. That's what I believe. I could be wrong, okay? And let me finish. I'll make a public statement right now. If that's what's griping y'all, I'll be happy to sit down with Laverne and with Sean, who works for me, and all of you, and we'll sit down and talk about that process. I'm not saying it's perfect. I came up with it in 2 days because we were in a hurry. And if y'all want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. I can make that change. I hate to say it, but I don't need anybody's approval to make that change. I have the authority to make that change. And I'll be happy to listen. But what I'm trying to figure out, is that what y'all are upset about, or is it really this?
it's both.
Well, okay, that's fine.
It's both.
I can take criticism.
And,
That's
and
okay.
listen. You know, we don't want to have to get his approval. I mean, you saying some people were on this extreme, you carried it to this extreme, and you're going to have the authority to make a decision. We don't want to be in that position. We want to go down the middle. If we can write something down the middle that we can all live with, then it doesn't have to be your call. It could be something that we can both live with.
That's what I want too. That's exactly what. That's the reason the current law says we're going to follow DOTD specifications. Now, do you think anybody out there is really following DOT? I mean, can you admit
Right.
that?
No, absolutely.
And
I
DOT
agree.
don't even address sewer pipe, and we're putting in sewer pipe every day. There's a need for this.
I agree.
Contrary
Absolutely.
to what's in this letter, no, there's no parish around that you can go grab them off the shelf and find them. They've got to be written. And they don't write them because of the amount of trouble that we're going through right here. So I just want to set the record clear that if y'all want to talk about the construction checklist procedure, all you got to do is place a call to me or Laverne. We'll set up a committee. We'll study that. That's not a problem. I'll do that whenever. But I don't want those problems and those issues confused with construction specifications. They're two totally separate issues. I have to go to the council because the ordinance says we're using DOTD specifications, which everyone will agree we're not using. But I do have to go to the council to get these approved. I don't have to go to the council to get the construction procedures changed. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands.
Make sure you guys understand that we tasked them because we knew that we couldn't follow DOT standards and all of this, that we had to be specific to Ascension Parish, and it is hard to do.
Sure.
And so that's why we're doing it, is that we want to make sure that whatever we do, we follow it. We know we couldn't follow the DOT standards, so we're going to write something that we can follow. so that you know what you can do. Because all of this time, well, it's on the books, but it's never been enforced, so we're not really following it. That's too great.
We don't want that.
And
We want to be treated equally.
So that's why we're doing it, and this is what we're trying to do. The process is hard, however, and so we want to get through with it. So I think we're set now. Mike, how are we going to set up to, we're going to have another meeting here.
Right,
You
yeah.
suggest a date?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, a minute ago when we asked how many days you need, I was thinking 30 days. Of course, y'all said 60. I would think a good compromise would be 45 days and bring it all. And let's attempt to knock it out in one more meeting. I think that's doable, and that would put us the first week of May.
The only thing about that, I think there's going to be some dialogue comes up, and I think what Ronnie was saying, that some things about what you decide depends upon some of the changes that is questionable whether it's made or not. And I think we're probably better off doing 2 meetings in a shorter period of time so that you can take what changes that we would definitely make and then go back and then come back and say, okay, now that we've done this, we have these suggestions. And I think that's what I'm hearing from them from that standpoint.
Mike, is that what you think we need?
And maybe by 45 days, we can get it done.
Well, I would like to see their comments in writing, and then
Advance of the meeting, right.
well,
Yeah.
once they submit those, I would suggest this process. I will be happy to meet with that group, or Keith and I together, and receive, discuss, and understand the comment, however long that takes. We will then take those comments to the Department of Public Works for their input as well. And then, yeah, we will make a decision as to whether or not we agree with all the comments. The specifications will be changed. Items that aren't changed, we will tell you what we didn't change. We won't hide it from you. We'll say, if there's 25 items, we fixed 15, but there's 10 over here we're not. And at that point, it becomes a debate between you, the public, and the council. And we understand that the more there's out there, the bigger the debate. But we have to, somehow protect the integrity of the parish here. But, at some point, it's going to be the decision of the council. So that process from the time you finish until we are ready for a hearing is probably going to be 15 days at best, because we've got to meet with you, we've got to meet with DPW, we've got to make some changes and redraft the document. So if y'all have your comments in 45 days, it's probably going to be 60 days before we would be ready for another hearing.
I'm curious, excuse me, I'm curious, you want 45 days or 60 days, but obviously you've already read these construction standards because you have issues with them. So why do we need to extend the amount of time that you need to go back and reread?
It's not that we need to reread them.
Well, we need to hear the recommendations, too.
They need, they need to propose solutions.
Well, they've been proposing some in some respects.
Not,
Now, well, hang on, Mike. I mean, maybe not the way, not necessarily what you'd agree with, but do you need 45 or 60 days to fine tune all these recommendations?
Well, we got to have some backup to do these things.
Backup, could you be more specific?
Well, we gotta. I mean, Michael's got a license to practice this. We don't. We use a common sense solution, and then we got to find the data to back it up. So it's going to take us a little more time. Plus, we don't do this full time. We all run companies.
I would like a little time schedule. I think initially we could take 3 weeks, and I'd like to have another meeting in 3 weeks. And you take your information and get it to Michael by the Friday before. That would be on the 10th of April. That's a Monday. We're gonna have more than one meeting, so don't. I want to make sure you know
That's
we're
good.
gonna have more than one meeting. But we could go on the 10th. That'll give us 3 weeks. As before, the Friday before is okay with you, that they would have all whatever information and suggestions you would have would be the Friday before
It'd be
in
April
Michael's
7th.
hands. That would be on the 7th.
Yeah.
It's in his hands that we will address at the meeting at the 10th. And then after that, we're going to have another meeting 3 weeks from there, at which time we're going to try to get to the end of this point and make some decisions and recommendations. Then Michael can go with a full review with DPW to make sure that we have all our bases covered from our standpoint and legal and backed up with everything. And we'll do our research, and then we'll come to you with the final document. And that might take a couple of weeks, and then that's something that has gone the route. Everybody's had input. We've done what, and I think by the 45 days, then we can have an ending point to this.
So April 7th.
Yes, because we're trying to find an ending point. I mean, we can.
So they need
talk-
to have comments on the whole thing for April 7th?
Yeah, what we'd like to do, Mike, at April 7th, they're going to send you comments. And we will address them, those comments, on the 10th. That we'll have another meeting just like this. After that, after we take in all of that and we try to make some decisions in, is that we're going to go another 3 weeks, and on that Friday, you'd have your final comments and final responses on that next meeting, and then we're going to move forward.
We would like to have going into the final, we'd like to have a draft of what's been agreed to before.
Well, you're gonna receive
Beforehand.
that.
So what happens after April 10th? We're going to redraft the document at that point?
Well, if we had agreed on some changes, I mean, like tonight, you said the intent on the compaction
Okay.
issue was something that we can change readily. You might have to say that they have something that you really have to go back again later. We may be able to, I don't know what's going to happen. You may have to schedule a working meeting with the guys on some things that you're still far apart.
Specifically,
There
we
may
got-
be some things we can agree upon then and move on and get that off the table. That's what I'd like to do. Get some things off the table and really find out specifically by the last 3 weeks what we're really here for.
Right, that's good.
Let's get the easy things off the table and move on.
We're more than happy to help, and like I said, we want good specification for the parish, but there are a few things in here that they don't have specifications on that we don't have anything to comment on.
Well-
For instance, curb and gutter, there's nothing on curb and gutter in the specifications at all. And it calls for cylinder brakes on curb and gutter, but what kind of concrete do we use on curb and gutter?
Can you please send us that too?
Okay.
I mean, it may be an omission that you have an issue
Let me-
with, that's fine.
Let me comment on something you said earlier. You don't have to give us any supporting documentation or information as to, to support your claim. I think at this point, we want to know what gives you heartburn and why does it give you heartburn. That's all we need to know.
And your recommendation.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that. I mean, you can give us a recommendation, but if you're struggling with that, and then just tell us what gives you a problem. But I mean, that's I don't want you to think that you got to go research the DOTD code or somebody else's specifications to justify your change. If it gives you a problem, then it gives you a problem and tell us about it.
Because pretty much y'all did the same thing to us. Y'all pull out the red book and said, this, boom, boom, this is why, this is this why. So we figured we had to do the same thing.
I mean, I don't necessarily. I mean, that's the reason we're writing this is we don't think the red book is applicable here. So I mean,
Okay.
I think we've made a lot of concessions. From
Has
that.
everybody had an opportunity to make sure and sign on the paper that we have? Ms. June, when we do send out something, can you put all these people on that mailing list
Do they
for
have
information?
any of them that has an email address? If you please put it on there, I'll send out an email to everyone.
Yeah, if you wish to get things
If you
emailed,
don't have an email,
address
put your
to,
phone
please,
number, and I called everyone
I'll leave
on
it
that
here
list from the
and
last
you
one.
can put it on there if we don't have it. Make sure that you're in the loop for any communication back and forth. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Kent, Roy Domain, Capital Region Builders Association. I'd like to suggest a comment to Michael and to Laverne, and I'm not sure if it's acceptable or not. The thought is, I listened to Mr. Carey and others talk about the amount of area we're working with now in these large developments, 100, 200, 300 acres, and talking about that amount of compaction on that general surface. And we build houses within certain servitudes, if you will, setbacks, if you will, of the properties. If we have a 150-foot lot, that 150-foot lot doesn't start to the point where the property line actually begins, which is what, 10, 11 foot off the curb. We got a 25-foot setback, so from the edge of the curb where your DPW regulations required you to compact the soil under the curb basically stopped, we've got another distance of 35 or so feet before compaction for the site begins. And the same thing is true in the rear of the lot. We're dealing with 15 foot of servitude of drainage, period, for every lot, plus we have a building minimum, which is on every lot now, correct? A building minimum per lot, just like we have a 25-foot setback off the property line in the front on average, we now have a building setback on the rear, correct? 20 foot from building line, excuse me, from property line. Okay, so we got 20 off the back, we got 25 off the front. That's 45 foot of surface area that technically doesn't have to be compacted. Am I wrong?
No, that's correct, and that's in here. Item A under compaction spells that out, that these specifications only deal with the envelope between the front and rear setbacks.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, I think everybody had an opportunity to express themselves. We are going to make the next meeting on Monday, the 10th, and if it's okay, we'd like to have it at 5. We're having a couple of councilmen that are having trouble getting here for work.
In fact, Ken, I want to apologize to everyone for being late.
No, that's okay.
One of those days.
Yeah, it's one of those days. We'll have it at 5 p.m. That may be able to get everyone else to get a day's work in. And we will go as long as it takes to address as many of these problems that we can. And then we will commit to you that we will have at least one more meeting. And we will try to get to that point where we can have you a document after that next meeting. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.